Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya English. I'm Burges Watson. Coming up on the program, as the push for peace continues, we get the latest from the frontline Ukrainian region of Mykolaiv. We'll be speaking to the regional governor, Vitali Kim. We'll also get the latest on continuing settler violence in the West Bank, and we'll be discussing the lifting of Syria sanctions and what that means for the country's way forward. Hello and welcome to the programme. We begin with the latest on the war in Ukraine, and President Donald Trump has stated that a peace agreement now looks closer than ever. This follows on from a series of talks which have included US envoys Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and European leaders in Berlin. But some key issues remain, notably whether Ukraine will have to surrender territory to Russia and whether Russia will accept NATO troops in Ukraine. All this forms part of a revised peace plan, which was initially seen as leaning towards Russia. Well, the Kremlin has made its stance on NATO troops in Ukraine very clear. It's a firm no. However, they've also stated they are open to further discussions. Well, we're joined now by Vitali Kim, who is the governor of Mykolaiv Oblast. And just to remind our viewers, Mykolaiv is in the south of Ukraine. It touches the Black Sea. There's the city of Odessa to the west, Crimea to the southwest. Mr. Kim, it's cold, it's winter. Temperatures where you are close to zero at night. And I'm just wondering what life is like for ordinary Ukrainians, for people living in frontline regions like yours right now.
Hello, Tom. Thank you for inviting me. I want to say that our life is like common life, but still we have a lot of problems because of the war, but we just get used to work and live during the challenge and during all the problems and stress that we have in here. We almost forgot how it was before the 2022. Still, we have operating business. We have barbershops, I don't know, dogs, delivery and flowers and beers on the streets. But we have challenge, and for example, in Odessa, in our neighbor region, they are without electricity for 3 days already. We managed to defend ourselves and to recover the electricity in 12 hours. But it's still only the beginning of the winter, and we're looking forward for new attacks from invader of country of Russia. So to tell the truth, we had a very difficult situation during 2022-2023, but now we have recovered almost all business and all services and that we had in a peaceful life.
So it sounds like despite the ongoing war, you and people in Mykolaiv are managing to live a somewhat ordinary existence. And when there's a setback and when Russia targets your energy infrastructure, for example, you bounce back very quickly. That's what it sounds like. Absolutely right. Because we have practiced for years for a big pity to recover fast, because people cannot live without electricity and water supply. So we have some reserves. We waiting for attacks, and we're trying to recover as fast as possible. And each year we became faster. So, and people get used to alarms, and people get used to the absence of electricity and water for some period of time. And we're living and planning our life and business in such a way, in such conditions. Right, and obviously Russia's made it a strategy to target the energy infrastructure, as I said, but also the other utilities like water. I mean, what do you think is their goal, and do you think it's having the desired effect?
You're right. Russia tried to attack critical infrastructure to influence people and civilian people. So they're expecting that our people will start arguing for our authorities to stop this war. And from my opinion, it's more not like war crimes, it's like a terrorism, because Russia attacks with missiles and drones critical infrastructure. First of all, it is electricity and heating plants that avoiding people to receive the basic needs. So it is truly difficult to be without electricity and heating for 3 days in the winter. We have average temperature now about 0, but the winter is just starting. From my point of view, that Russia didn't manage to receive the result because Ukrainian people are very strong and we get used to, and we have some resilience not to arguing about conditions, because from this is like social mind that people will prefer to be without electricity or water to be with Russia, because anything that will happen, it is better that to be occupied. So our people are standing and trying to resist to all the problems that Russia gives us.
Okay, I mean, obviously there's a psychological dimension to any war, but in this particular war, I mean, there does seem to be a certain amount of disinformation circulating. Obviously, the goal of that is to confuse people. And how do you counter the fake news and the disinformation that's doing the rounds?
Ukraine is on our way to democratic country. We have lots of free media. Also, we have Telegram channels and different points of information that gives true information to our people. Also, we are trying to analyze and talking about media attacks. From my opinion, we won this war at the beginning because Russia expected that they will fulfill all the media field with fakes, and we will be afraid and we will run. No, we understood that it is not true, and there is a huge amount of people and companies that working against propaganda, against fake news. That's why some news, like fake news, are living for a couple of days on the territory of Ukraine, and then they disappear because authorities like me also, we're explaining what information is true and what information is false.
Okay, so it sounds like the fake news objectives simply aren't working. Let's talk about the security situation, the military situation in the region of Ukraine where you are. I mean, are there fears where you are of a renewed Russian offensive targeting, for example, Mykolaiv?
It's just an example of fake news that Russia do about offensive movements in the south of Ukraine. And it is impossible because, first of all, they are not preparing to force the river Dnipro. It is big river, maybe 4 kilometers wide, and it is winter now. It is very hard to cross this river. Also, they're moving their forces from the south, from this direction, south direction, to Donetsk region, to Zaporizhia region, to the east of our country, because they have problems with troops on their basic line of attack. So they just try to create fake news, people to be worried about it, and they have nothing in common with real situation on the south of Ukraine. For now, it is stable situation on the south. They are not able to do anything on the south of Ukraine at all. If they will make a decision to renew the campaign to attack the south of Ukraine, they will need 2 months up to 6 months to be prepared for this. Our security service, we cannot see any preparation. We can see only that they move the resource from the south to another direction because they have problems on the front line.
Governor Kim, let's talk about the peace efforts. I'd like to ask you, what are your thoughts with regards to the progress towards brokering a deal to end this war?
To tell the truth, I do not have exact information about negotiations that are taking place now. I have only expectation that this negotiation will have an effect and have a result in the future, nearest future, because it's just our people are really exhausted. They will not surrender. We can keep fighting, but we're exhausted. This is true. We need to to talk about this. And that's why most people of Ukraine are, from my opinion, expecting the results of this negotiation to stop this war. But still, I do not have the true information, and all information that I have, I cannot talk about it, not to make any effect on negotiations that are taking place.
Okay, I understand that. And before we move on, I mean, there is also this occasional request that comes from Washington, but it's also come from Moscow a few times, that elections should be held in Ukraine. Obviously, a war is going on. Most people understand that you can't hold elections during a war, but apparently not everyone. What's your thoughts with regards to that demand?
From my opinion, election could take place in Ukraine, but the very important thing that we must guarantee the right for vote for every citizen of Ukraine. First of all, it is our soldiers, our people on zero line. The second, all the other people and even all people that are refugees abroad, we need to guarantee that they can realize their right to vote. This is the main problem, that it is difficult to do during the wartime. And I think we need some time. And I'm not afraid that election in Ukraine will change the situation and our vector to democracy and to Europe. But still, it is a difficult task to make it in good quality. That's why I think that we should have them, but we need to do it right.
Absolutely. Governor Kim, you aren't just a public figure, you're also a businessman. So I'd like to get your thoughts about post-war reconstruction. What do you think are going to be the main priorities for rebuilding damaged parts of Ukraine?
This is a very good question, because the south of Ukraine, it's not only the region that need to be recovered. We recovered already about 44% of all damaged or destroyed buildings. And the main problems are military risks, and more than 800 companies recovered their business in here. We have a lot of new companies. I think that the south of Ukraine could be the territory of recovering of economy and one of the headliners of Ukrainian economy, because we have lots of possibilities and our team are working to create conditions for investors for recovering and for creating additional value and creating business, because we know that we cannot manage to recover fully the country without support of the international partners, without investment in the real economy, real sectors of real economy. But we need to create conditions to avoid corruption, to avoid bureaucracy and problems. And for now, we have lots of opportunities, like our government opened the market of the land, so you can invest in land and you can earn money. I think that if we'll talk about it easily, the price for the land or for the rent in Ukraine are on the lowest level now. It is very attractive for investment in the future. But I truly believe that it could be possible only when the war will stop. But we need to be prepared now. And many companies from other countries are now searching the market and making investigation how to do it when the war will stop. When talking about our region, we are concentrating on agriculture, about logistic port, exporting facilities, and industrial park. We're creating a huge industrial park, the biggest in Ukraine, with the best conditions that will be for investors. And negotiation already starts. This is like a mark that future pause or stop, war stop is possible, because for now investors start to run again. I don't know how to say it properly. And I truly believe that our authorities and me will provide the best conditions for investors to recover the economy of Ukraine and the south of Ukraine.
Yeah, and I think having a figure like you with a proven track record in business is going to be attractive to people in Washington. Obviously, President Trump is a businessman first and foremost. Could also be very attractive to people in the region that I'm speaking to you from, which is from the Gulf. Are you reaching out to Gulf countries with a message of please invest in the south of Ukraine?
By all means, because first of all, it is logistics. This is a gate to your country. And talking about food security, talking about agriculture, we are specialized. We have splendid land in here. It is cheap now. And there are possibilities that Ukraine already made for companies that could invest in agricultural sector. And we have a very low, I don't know how to say it, expenses for business in Ukraine. On the mostly that we need access to the cheap money, and your countries have money and could invest on the perfect price now. But from my opinion, to receive successful business, we need to start projecting now, because from the beginning of projecting to start the projects, you will need a year, maybe a year and a half. That's why our doors are wide open, and I promise the full support for all investment, for all business that will come to Ukraine, and not to recover or for social policy, also for earning money, because we need taxes in Ukraine to recover all other social programs. So we have programs from government for investment nurse, nanny, that provides many preferences for business, for big business, average business that will invest in Ukraine. So it is without taxes, with infrastructure constructed by government, and many other things. And me personally, I'm interested in investment in the south of Ukraine and in Ukraine, and I can provide support from my position to any investors that will come to my country.
I just want to ask you on a different note. I mean, obviously you've been through nearly 4 years of warfare in your country, and you hold public office. And obviously this has been a strain on every Ukrainian household, on your minds, on your morale. What do you do on a bad day to boost your morale? Have you got some techniques? Have you got some outlet for somehow letting off steam or changing your mood when you've had bad news or when it's been a bad day?
I'm not a typical man that need to recover. I'm smiling a lot. I have a lot of hobbies, my family, and I'm living the full life. But this helps me to work hard. And I have a goal, and I want to win. So I'm receiving results. So talking about our people just very strong, because we just get used to the war. We have lots of problems in the past. We have 2 revolutions, so it's not so big surprise for us to work and live in hard times. But our people recovering due to their own families, due to their own city, country, work, hobbies, pets, and other things. And to tell the truth, many people of Ukraine now are also smiling and trying to work to live their full life. For recovering, we're using, I say no, maybe love, I don't know how to say it, but still people are trying not to leave Ukraine and to work hard inside the country.
Okay, and just lastly, Governor Kim, do you have a parting message for the international community, perhaps for President Trump, perhaps for President Putin? Who would you choose and what would you say?
It is hard to me to address such kind of message, but war is stopped. I wish that all our people will not be killed by invaders anymore. But I think that this peace must be fair, because we are defending, we are not aggressors, and we are defending our homeland. So my message is, let's talk and stop it.
Okay, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Thank you very much indeed. Vitali Kim, the governor of Mykolaiv Oblast. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you. See you.
Now turning to the Middle East, and despite a ceasefire in Gaza, which took effect on the 10th of October, UN agencies are reporting that severe malnutrition amongst children remains widespread. Well, the humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian territory continues to worsen, with the Save the Children group saying that it is still unable to deliver necessary assistance. Well, they're citing Israeli restrictions for this. Meanwhile, Israeli shelling has been reported in parts of southern Gaza, even as winter storms lash the fragile structures and flood the tents, which are sheltering the vast majority of displaced Palestinians. Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, the US Deputy Ambassador to the UN says that President Donald Trump would not allow Israel to annex any part of the territory. Those comments follow on from Israel's approval of 19 settlement outposts as independent settlements, marking the third such move under current policy. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Ahmed Fattouh, who is a spokesperson for Fateh, who joins us now from Ramallah. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Ahmed. Always a pleasure talking to you. I'd like to start by talking about the situation in the West Bank. There's been yet more violence in the West Bank. This time, a 16-year-old Palestinian boy by the name of Ammar Sabah has been shot and killed. That happened in the town of Tuku on Tuesday. Before that, another teenager was killed. Israel says in at least one of these cases, one of the boys was throwing stones and bottles. What's your understanding of what happened?
Of course, this is a ridiculous excuse to say they are killing children because they are throwing stones or bottles. That is absolute nonsense. What's happening is the typical Israeli settlers terrorism that want to terrorize the Palestinian people, the indigenous Palestinian communities, to push them away from their villages and from their lands in order for the Israeli occupation and colonialism to expand. This is not something new to us. This is not even new to the world. You have the Hilltop Boys, who is a terrorist organization inspired by extremist Zionist religious ideologies and committing Jewish terrorism, extremist Jewish terrorism against non-Jewish people of the Palestinian Holy Land. And that's mainly the Palestinian people. So what we have here is a continuous daily attacks on our civilians in the north, in the middle, in the south, everywhere, targeting villages and towns because it has less concentrated population and less in terms of presence of the Palestinian Authority and police, taking advantage of the occupation support and the unconditional support by the Israeli government and from far-right extremist parties like Ben Gvir and Smotrich Party. And by the way, by the Likud, the Hilltops boys were inspired by Sharon, the previous Prime Minister of Israel in the 2000s, who is a member of the Likud party. So those terrorist groups are there to provoke, to intimidate, to terrorize the Palestinian people and to push them out. And they have been, unfortunately, successful on many occasions. They were successful in kicking out about 150 Palestinians from Mghayr. And they are terrorizing people in Safriyatta, taking lands and burning the trees and burning the olive trees. Olive in Palestine is not only a symbolic item and a symbolic tree, it is also an economical product for the Palestinian villagers and farmers. They burned thousands of trees this season, causing great losses for the farmers and for the olive oil industry. The prices jumped into double the price of last year because of this terrorism. So this is a systematic effort inspired by political ideology and political stance that wish to move the Palestinians out of their lands, squeeze them into Pantostans, in order for the Israeli colonialism expand further and further, and eventually ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people. Of course, that's their plans, but we are here steadfast and we will not move away from our lands. And this is not only a crime and the violence of a grave terrorism, but it's also against the international law and against all the peace treaties and also all agreement between us and Israel.
Mr. Fattouh, according to the UN, and I'm sure you know this, but this is really for the benefit of our viewers, October saw the highest number of settler attacks on record. It doesn't sound like, from what you're saying, the Israeli government is doing anything to stop this kind of violence. What's your message to, for example, Washington, which takes a very close interest in developments in this part of the world?
The Washington needs to step in and to stop this madness. This is not only a crime of violence, it is a terrorism. There are terrorist groups like ISIS, or like any extremist ideological group. So we have to ask the world to step in order to force peace and to prevent this ethnic cleansing campaign. It's openly said by Israeli ministers and by Israeli leaders. This is not something hidden. This is not a secret anymore. We have Smotrich, who is funding these terrorist groups. We have Ben Gvir, who is providing weapons, and there is a footage of Ben Gvir distributing weapons to those terrorist groups and inciting them to attack the Palestinian villages and Palestinian towns. The United States and the international community has to protect the Palestinian civilians, has to apply the international law, has to deal with this group as terrorist group, as defined to be defined as terrorists, not only violence or an out-of-hand gangs. No, they are terrorist groups that are moving with a political agenda, with a strategy to move the Palestinians out of their lands. And what's taking place is going completely out of hand. Now we have a situation living that we are scared to move between city and another city. The streets between cities are filled with these gangs that attack the Palestinian civilians, act at night and also in the morning when we are going to our work, when we're going to schools. So it is terrorizing our life. It's obstructing our daily lives, obstructing our work and our economy. In addition to their terrorism and killing Palestinian children and Palestinian teenagers, as you just said. Today they killed a young boy. 2 days ago they killed another. They shoot, they have a very advanced weapon. They have snipers, they have very heavy M16s and sometimes even bombs. And they attack and they burned many of the houses and villages and cars yesterday on different Palestinian villages in the West Bank. This is a daily systematic terrorism, is like pogroms. And here where the United States and the international community need to pressure and sanction Israel for their terrorism, the Israeli occupation forces not only allowing them to do this, they are providing protection for them. Nobody can defend themselves against those terrorist settlers, because the moment you touch them, the Israeli occupation will come to your house, arrest you, arrest your family, and sometimes even destroy your own house. So we are dealing with a comprehensive system of terrorism and occupation and ethnic cleansing, aiming at moving the Palestinians out of their lands.
We've been told that Israel is going ahead with the demolition of several structures in the northern refugee camp of Nur al-Shams, there in the West Bank where you are. What's your understanding of why Israel is doing this?
Until now, Israel caused the ethnic cleansing of 50,000 Palestinians. 50,000 Palestinian refugees are homeless right now because of the Israeli occupation systematic attack on refugee camps. What they are doing is a process of pushing the Palestinians out of their inhabitant places to make them transfer from location to location, squeeze them into pantostans, into ghettos, without any source of income, without any security, and siege them by the Israeli occupation forces in order to seize lands and expand and open more way for the colonialist project and the Israeli colonial settlements. We have the E project, the E1 project, which you are fully aware of. It is extremely dangerous, that would divide the West Bank from north to south. And they are pushing toward the east to expand the colonial settlers of Israeli occupation into Jericho. So these plans aim to undermine the Palestinian statehood, to undermine the Palestinian Authority, disconnecting the cities and villages from each other. This cripples the economy as well as cripples our representation and the governance efforts to manage the people and our society. Also, they are building gates and checkpoints all over the West Bank, that they reach a point that they could close all West Bank within 5 minutes. It just needs one command by the Israeli occupation forces to close the gates, and they would prevent millions of Palestinians from reaching out to their cities or to their factories or to their farms or to their workplaces within minutes of Israeli occupation order. So that is a process of an apartheid system coupled with occupation that wish to push Palestinians out into small ghettos and destroy the prospects of a Palestinian state.
Okay, Mr. Fattouh, we're nearly out of time. I just want to ask you briefly, though. I mean, you've probably seen the reports as well that there is growing frustration between the Trump administration and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. In particular, it centers around the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. But given that context, and given that there is allegedly this angry message that's been sent from Washington to Israel, and given that Prime Minister Netanyahu is likely to be meeting President Trump at the end of this month, wouldn't now be an advisable moment to lodge a very firm complaint with Washington about these actions in the West Bank? Shouldn't the Palestinian authorities be taking action right at this moment?
We are reporting daily, the international community, the Americans and everybody, about the criminality and the crimes against humanity that Israel committing in the West Bank and Gaza. We are in contacts with within the Europeans, the EU, the Arab world, as well as the Americans, although that we are banned right now, as you are aware of, from reaching United States, from entering United States. And although our embassy is closed in the United States and the PLO office is closed in the United States, but still our messages reach President Trump and the American administration. It's regrettable that we continue to see this biased approach by the US administration, listening to Netanyahu, listening to the far-right coalition of the Israeli government, while dismissing the messages from the Palestinians and all this evidence on the ground. They see it in the news, they see it everywhere, reported by the UN, reported by Amnesty International, by Human Rights Watch, and even by our governments and ministries. We have been calling for the stop of settlements since 30 years, since we signed Oslo. Each US presidents are full aware that one of the main obstacles for the two-state solution is these colonial settlements that are expanding unconditionally and without any constraints on the Palestinian lands, which is hindering the two-state solution and hindering the negotiations. It doesn't make sense that we are discussing a permanent peace based on the two-state solution when one part is expanding unconditionally with all the support of the Western world, and the other part is receiving all kind of bombardment and terrorism and the starvation and the blockade on Gaza, this barbaric blockade that belongs to the Dark Ages, is still ongoing, while the world is watching and seeing clearly how children and babies and infants are dying from cold, hypothermia, while food and shelter and warmth is just one decision away from them if the United States wishes to push Israel to stop it. In 1956 war, according to the diaries of Ben Gurion, he said one phone call by the President Roosevelt forced him to retreat, and he closed that phone while he was crying. It just requires one phone call from the United States to stop this tragedy, that ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Palestine. In this world, we are witnessing children and babies dying from cold, and the world is looking silent and impotent in front of these images. It's deplorable, it's tragic that we are living in this unjust world, and this is the time that the international community to come into its responsibility and to fulfill the international resolutions that Israel is obligated to abide with by enforcing and applying sanctions on this occupying power, and to be brave and to be in support of our global values and our humanitarian values. It is depressing that we are living this dystopian future today when we are seeing this blockade that belongs to the dark ages, when the world has all the tools to end it and to stop it. I hope that the United States would listen to the voice of the majority, including the voice of Americans who are now from both parties, with the Republicans and Democrats, are against this ongoing genocide of Gaza, which did not stop, by the way. It's only hiding behind a veil of a flimsy ceasefire deal that Israel violates every day. Just today, they killed 9 Palestinians, and from cold, 14 Palestinians were killed, died, and 4 children among them died from cold. When Israel had all the power and all the capabilities to allow the entrance of all shelters and clothing,
all right, Mr.
gas
Fattouh,
for warming the people.
Right.
They are committing terrorism in front of our eyes.
Mr. Fattouh, I'm sorry to cut you short. We're out of time, but we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Ahmed Fattouh, spokesperson for Fateh. Thank you for your time, sir. Now, in other news, President Donald Trump has added 5 countries, including Syria, to the US travel ban. Well, this move comes even as Washington works to strengthen ties with Damascus following the Syrian President Ahmed Sharaf's White House visit back in November. Well, the White House says that Syria still lacks reliable authorities for issuing passports and civil documents, as well as proper security vetting. Well, the decision also follows on from a recent ISIS attack in central Syria, which killed 3 Americans. Well, we can speak now to Abdul Hafiz Sharaf, who's a member of the Syrian American Council. He joins us now. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Let's start by talking about what's been a pretty stunning 12 months for Syria. I mean, there's been change in your country beyond most people's expectations, ending what's been decades of international isolation. Let's talk specifically, though, about the congressional vote to repeal the Caesar Act, i.e. the lifting of sanctions. Your organization, the Syrian American Council, called this the most difficult hurdle, and you said it's now been overcome. Why is this such a significant step, and what does this mean for Syria?
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. The sanctions, particularly, the Caesar Act, were not an end in themselves. They were a tool to apply pressure, on the Assad regime, constrain its war economy and prevent normalization without political change. In that sense, they played really a pivotal role in isolating the regime and shaping the environment that eventually led to its collapse. Now the question is why it's still there. The Assad regime is gone. It's totally, the question is not whether the sanctions, worked or not, but now how they transition. Lifting the Caesar Act is very important for the future of Syria. If Syria wants to have a better future, Caesar Act right now is pressuring the people, not the Assad regime. The Assad regime is gone completely. So that's why we are hoping that the Senate actually is going into the right direction right now by removing and lifting the Caesar Act completely and totally without any conditions. Right.
So still some more work needs to be done for the full lifting of sanctions. And some of our viewers might be wondering why the Caesar Act has that name. And I'll just remind them, it was named after a Syrian military defector by the name of Farid al-Madhan, who smuggled some 55,000 photos of detainees out of Syria. They're obviously killed under torture. This all happened about a decade ago. I mean, looking back, just how important were his actions, do you think?
Actually, it is very important. I mean, at that point, the Caesar Act by itself, I think it was one of the reasons, why the Assad regime has fallen. It played a pivotal role. As you know, that the detainees, some of them actually, Assad regime has starved them to death. And then after that, they were taking, these kind of pictures, like a photo session for the people. It's insane what was happening, in Syria. And that's why these sanctions were imposed. Now, after the fall of the Assad regime, these sanctions, hopefully today, actually, the Senate will vote have the vote, the final vote on the NDAA, which has the removal, the complete removal, the total removal of the sanctions of the Caesar Act. So hopefully, and we are hoping that will happen very soon, in few hours actually, and then after that it will go to President Trump to sign it. And by that, all the sanctions will be removed totally. And this is very important, for the Syrian people at the moment.
Right, and obviously, as you said there, this defector by the name of Farid al-Madhan, who was codenamed Caesar, you say he played a really important role in the downfall of Bashar al-Assad. But when we look at Syria's rehabilitation into the international community, and that's been extremely dramatic as well, who do you think deserves the most thanks for that?
I mean, to be honest, the people who suffered under that regime and they were still there in Syria, and they tried to live under all these consequences in Syria. They faced like difficulties like no one seen before. It was like living in hell basically. Everything is expensive. Everything was really no services, nothing like that. They were living like primitive, very kind of primitive living conditions. So they deserve the thanks. They deserve all of, they are the ones who caused the Assad regime to fall. So basically now the Assad regime is not there, and now Syria is trying to shift to the Western axis, and they want to be with the allies with the West, with the US, and they want to be away from Russia, away from Iran. And this is, by lifting the sanctions, we will help them to do that. Also, lifting the sanctions will prevent Iran from coming back to Syria. It will prevent Russia from coming back to Syria, because, Russia actually, we don't want them to be the lifeline, for the Syrian people. We don't want to push the Syrian people and the Syrian government to be to go back to Russia. We have to lift the sanctions so they can survive. They can rebuild, start rebuilding, the country, start having some services, because the Caesar Act, as you know, is very strict sanctions, and it sanctioned almost everything in Syria. It affects even the health sector. It affects the housing, the reconstruction. It affects the banking system. Sanctions on almost everything: electricity, fuel, services. Also, it affected the cost of living on the Syrian people, the jobs and income. All of that, it is part of the Caesar Act. The Caesar Act nowadays is an obstacle for the Syrian people to have a brighter future, and it has to go away so Syrian people can actually ally, can transition to the West.
And what's your message to the international community, in particular to people who are considering investing in Syria? What do you say to them?
I think, the meeting that we have with Brian Mast, Brian Mast, the congressman, and President al-Shara, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, that meeting was initially with business people. We invited business delegation to Syria. We went with the business delegation to Syria, private equities from the United States, and we went to Syria to see and to explore opportunities. And we found a lot of opportunities in Syria. We sat down with the government, with the Syrian government, with the SSF, the Syrian Sovereignty Fund, and we talked to them about what kind of opportunities we can have, the American companies can have. We went with oil and gas companies, we went with construction companies, we went with rare earth kind of phosphate and all of that. So we talked to the Syrian government about the opportunities, and we found actually a lot of opportunities in Syria. We think the Caesar Caesar Act, when it's lifted, and that's what, this delegation, the business delegation, when they met with Brian Mast, they told him about the opportunities in Syria, about how the Syrian people actually are trying to live their lives, and they want just to rebuild their country. They don't want anything else. They don't want to be a threat, to anyone else in the region. They just want to reconstruct and rebuild the country. They talked to him about, the banking system and how the Caesar Act, for example, affect the banking system in Syria. Syrian banks now, after lifting the Caesar Act, they can start reconnecting even partially, to the correspondent banks. Money transfers from abroad become much cheaper, become much easier to Syria. And that actually will start to create jobs in Syria. It will start to have, Syrian people will start to have some income, and this could be visible within months. Actually, Caesar Act froze construction, energy, transport, manufacturing, all of that. So they talked to Brian Mast about that, and he started to think about, now the American businessmen, they want to go to Syria to invest. They want to have some opportunities, and that would help the country, the Syrian country, to have a better future. It will also help the American companies, to have more opportunities and make more investments in Syria, and that kind of common interest, between Syria and the United States, and that's what we want to have, a common interest that actually engage, Syrian government with the American investments much more, and that will lead to more stability in Syria. It will lead to a better future. It will help the country to stabilize and prevent any kind of even, I would say, bringing investments to Syria. It's not only going to help the stabilization of the country. It will prevent Syria from going back to Russia, to Iran. It will also countering radical ideology, because these extremists, they try to exploit these kind of conditions, living conditions, and they try to exploit that kind of environment to resurge again. And having alternative for the Syrian people, having alternative businesses and all of that will prevent all of this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sharaf. I'm so sorry we're out of time. Abdul Hafiz Sharaf, member of the Syrian American Council. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. See you then. Good night.